You are standing in a crowded room. The air is thick with conversation, but something feels off. You listen closely. The words people are speaking are not just wrong, they are absurd. Yet no one seems to notice. A man in a sharp suit proclaims something demonstrably false, and the crowd nods in agreement. Someone else raises a valid question, but instead of debate, they are met with laughter, scorn, dismissed as if truth itself is irrelevant. You feel the walls closing in, the air growing stale. How can so many people, intelligent in their own right, be so utterly blind to reality? Now imagine this scenario is not confined to a single room, but spans nations, institutions, entire civilizations. Why do the most absurd ideas flourish, while reason drowns beneath the noise? Why do the most foolish individuals wield influence, while those who see clearly are silenced or ignored? Is stupidity simply a lack of intelligence, or is it something far more insidious, something systemic, contagious, even weaponized? Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German theologian and philosopher who lived through the horrors of Nazi Germany, proposed a radical idea. Stupidity is not just ignorance, it is a moral failing, a force more dangerous than evil itself. But how could that be? How could stupidity, not malice, not hatred, not even greed, be the greatest threat to society? The answer lies not in individual intellect, but in something far more disturbing: the psychology of crowds, the corruption of conformity, and the terrifying ease with which a person can be turned into an instrument of their own oppression. But before we uncover the true nature of this threat, we must first ask, where does stupidity come from? Stupidity. A simple word, yet far more complex and sinister than most realize. You might think of it as a mere lack of intelligence, an absence of knowledge. But Bonhoeffer disagreed. He argued that stupidity was not simply intellectual deficiency. It was a deeper psychological and moral phenomenon, one that thrived not in isolation, but in the presence of power and conformity. Why? Because stupidity is not about thinking less. It's about surrendering the ability to think at all. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow self, the hidden part of human nature that, when left unchecked, takes over, acting not in rational self-interest, but in blind instinct. Arthur Schopenhauer warned of the will to ignorance, where people do not simply fail to seek the truth, but actively avoid it, because truth demands responsibility, and responsibility is a burden most would rather escape. Bonhoeffer observed something chilling in Nazi Germany. As power concentrated, stupidity became more prevalent, not less. It was not the uneducated alone who succumbed, but intellectuals, leaders, even those who had once been clear thinkers. They became cogs in a machine, repeating slogans, obeying orders, embracing absurdities, not because they lacked intelligence, but because intelligence itself had become irrelevant. Why? Because stupidity is not about being foolish. It is about becoming foolish. It is a state induced by social pressure, political narratives, and the intoxicating comfort of the herd. Once a person submits to the mass mind, they are no longer thinking as themselves. They are thinking as the collective, and the collective does not think. It only reacts. The terrifying part? The stupid person does not know they are stupid. In fact, they are often more confident in their beliefs than the wise. Nietzsche warned of this paradox. The more ignorant one is, the less they question themselves. Meanwhile, those who see the truth hesitate, burdened by self-doubt, forever questioning. The result? Fools lead with certainty while the wise remain hesitant. But if stupidity is not a lack of intelligence, if it is a psychological and social condition, then what does that mean for the world? It means stupidity is not just a personal failing. It is a weapon, a tool that can be cultivated, controlled, and deployed for power. And the worst part? The people under its spell will defend it to the death. The question now is, what happens when stupidity is left unchecked? Imagine waking up one morning to find that the world has changed, but not in an obvious way. The sky is still blue, the streets still busy, conversations still flow. But something is missing. Truth, reason, accountability. You watch as people praise the very things that harm them, defend the lies that enslave them, and attack anyone who dares to question the madness. You want to scream, but you stop yourself. You realize something horrifying. The more you speak, the more they will turn against you. This is not just an abstract nightmare. It is history. It is reality. It is how civilizations collapse. Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity reveals something even more dangerous than mass ignorance. It exposes a system of control. A system where the more power is consolidated, the more stupidity is cultivated. Dictators do not fear intelligence. They fear independent thought. They do not need people to be dumb. They need them to be obedient. And what better way to ensure obedience than to train people to reject truth itself? Stupidity is the perfect weapon because it is self-replicating. Once infected, the host not only loses their ability to think critically, but actively resists those who still can. They become enforcers of their own mental prison. The more absurd an idea, the more fiercely they defend it, because to admit otherwise would be to shatter their entire worldview. Cognitive dissonance becomes their god, and they will sacrifice anything, morality, freedom, even their own future, to keep it alive. You see it everywhere, in the blind faith of ideologues who destroy lives in the name of progress, in the loyalty of followers who cheer as their leaders strip them of their rights, in the masses who laugh at those who warn of the dangers ahead, only to weep when the ruin finally arrives. Stupidity is not passive, it is active. It does not just accept lies, it demands them. Psychologists call this phenomenon the Dunning-Kruger effect, a cognitive bias where those who know the least are the most convinced they know everything. But Bonhoeffer saw something deeper. Stupidity is not just an individual failing. It is a collective force, a sickness that spreads through culture, education, and media. It is why entire nations can march willingly into destruction, why civilizations collapse not from invasion, but from their own blind arrogance. And the greatest irony? The intelligent are powerless against it, unless they understand its true nature. Stupidity cannot be reasoned with because it does not respond to reason. It cannot be debated because it does not seek truth. It can only be exposed. And that is where rebellion begins. But how does one fight a force that thrives in the very structure of society? How do you resist when stupidity is not just tolerated, but celebrated? The answer requires a complete shift in perspective. A rebellion of the mind. Imagine this. You are standing alone in a crowded room, surrounded by people who have surrendered their minds. They laugh at things that aren't funny. They repeat words that aren't their own. They defend ideas they have never questioned. And the moment you challenge them, they turn on you. Not because they have thought about your words, but because they have been trained not to. You realize then, the battle against stupidity is not just a battle of intelligence, it is a battle of courage. Bonhoeffer understood this well. You do not defeat stupidity by arguing with it. You do not awaken the mindless by presenting facts. Rationality is powerless against a force that does not care for reason. Instead, you must learn the art of subversion, the quiet rebellion of the individual who refuses to surrender their mind. Step 1. Accept the cost of thinking. The first rule of escaping mass stupidity is simple. You must be willing to be an outcast. Society does not reward those who think for themselves. It punishes them. The greatest thinkers in history, Socrates, Galileo, Nietzsche, Bonhoeffer himself, were not celebrated in their time. They were condemned. Because the herd does not like those who walk their own path. And yet, history vindicates the few who dare. The truth is never found in the center of the crowd. It is always on the fringes. To reclaim your mind, you must be willing to stand alone. Step 2. Master the art of discernment. Stupidity thrives on emotional manipulation. It replaces critical thought with tribal loyalty. To break free, you must learn to recognize when your emotions are being weaponized against you. Ask yourself, am I being told what to think? Or am I being encouraged to think for myself? Does this idea require blind belief, or does it withstand scrutiny? Am I reacting out of reason or out of fear and anger? The moment you start questioning, you begin dismantling the machine. Step 3. Do not waste energy on the incurable. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: some people cannot be saved. Not because they are incapable, but because they do not want to be. They will fight for their chains. They will attack those who offer them freedom. Your duty is not to awaken those who refuse to see. Your duty is to find the few who are ready, the ones who are already questioning, the ones who feel deep down that something is wrong but cannot yet put it into words. These are the minds worth reaching. These are the allies worth finding. Truth does not need numbers to survive. It needs courage, and that is what stupidity fears most. The one who stands against the many. Dietrich Bonhoeffer did not see stupidity as mere ignorance. He saw it as something far darker, a force that is not just intellectual, but spiritual. Because when a person surrenders their ability to think, they surrender more than their intelligence. They surrender their soul. Here is the final, most disturbing truth. Stupidity is not just an absence of intelligence. It is an absence of responsibility. It is the willingness to let others do your thinking for you. It is the comfort of the herd, the safety of obedience, the bliss of never questioning. And in that comfort, all evil finds its home. History's greatest atrocities were not carried out by monsters. They were carried out by ordinary people who obeyed without thinking. The horrors of the 20th century, Nazi Germany, the gulags of the Soviet Union, the Cultural Revolution, were not the work of a few masterminds. They were the work of millions who followed blindly. Who repeated the slogans? Who believed the propaganda? Who traded their conscience for belonging? And the greatest tragedy? Most of them thought they were the good guys. This is why Bonhoeffer concluded that stupidity is more dangerous than evil. Because evil at least recognizes itself. A truly evil person knows what they are doing. But the stupid, they commit atrocities with a smile, convinced they are on the right side of history. They persecute the innocent, believing they are heroes. They destroy the truth, believing they are protecting it. Now you must ask yourself, will you be part of the cycle? Or will you be the one who resists? It is not easy. It is not safe. To awaken from stupidity is to exile yourself from the comfort of the herd. It is to see the world as it truly is, ugly, chaotic, full of lies. But in that awakening, you reclaim the one thing that mass stupidity can never touch: your mind, your conscience, your soul. And perhaps, just perhaps, that is where real change begins. Not with the masses, but with the few who dare to think, the few who refuse to bow, the few who keep the fire of reason alive in a world consumed by darkness, the few who understand that stupidity is not destiny, it is a choice, and that means it can be defeated. The question is, will you be the one to fight?